There is an effort going on to try to get the Sonics or a Sonics team back in Seattle. Bipartisan effort. Representative David Frocht, a Democrat in Seattle, and this guy, Republican from Lake Stevens, Representative Mike Hope, who joins me here on News Talk 97.3 Cairo FM. Representative, thanks for coming on with me today.
Hey, thanks, Dori. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, all the problems we got in this state right now, how is it that the Sonics are even on your guys' radar screen right now?
Well, I'll tell you, this is something that we've actually been talking about, Representative Frocht and I, for a couple months. He's new to the legislature, and I'm rather new as well. I came in the election of 2008. And just kind of getting to know each other, we discovered that we're both basketball fans. You know, I'm from Cleveland originally, so just watching the whole LeBron James thing was kind of interesting. But that's actually what stimulated our conversation, was the $3.5 million a year. I mean, a game that can be raised by having a player like LeBron James. So that's what started this conversation. And I said, we're facing all these economic shortfalls. We're cutting here, we're cutting there. Whether you're for the cuts or not, the reality is this is about economics. This is about creating jobs.
So you say that you would be behind an effort as long as it doesn't cost the taxpayers any money. So how would the legislature even be involved if it didn't involve any public funding?
Well, I started looking at what are other states doing, and there's 23 of the 28 states that have professional sports teams that have actually implemented a fee, per se, on opposing teams that come here to play. And when you look at that, it actually first started in 1991 with Michael Jordan in the playoffs when they beat the Lakers, and they were given a bill, for playing in the state of California. And then Illinois returned the favor, and now all these teams do it. So you have 23 of 28 states that are doing that. And, our Seattle Mariners, our Seattle Seahawks, when they go to play the Browns, when they go to play the Indians, when they go to play Oklahoma or anywhere else, they get charged. Okay. They get charged, and we're not doing that here.
Okay, but again, how? So you're saying if there was a tax that was just basically a user fee for the franchises and for the visiting teams that come in?
Yeah, the state of California brings in $100 million a year by doing that. And so I think that there's an opportunity for this to be paid for by opposing teams. It wouldn't cost Washington State residents a dime.
Okay, and it would be just the NBA games or the NBA teams that come to town that would be taxed, or are you talking about baseball and football too?
Well, that's where we're setting up a task force, because this is just an option, by the way. This is one of the things that had been talked about. This is not a guarantee that this is going to happen, but, you could... if you wanted to make it more equitable, absolutely, you would do it with the Mariners and the Seahawks, because why not? Ichiro's getting taxed to play the Indians.
Well, but you're always going to face the challenge of the argument, if you're raising this money, if that tax money is available for the teams that come to play the Mariners and Seahawks, for example, then why would you spend it on a basketball arena instead of on education?
I'm glad you asked that question. One is, the simple fact that with the LeBron situation, we started looking at, well, how does an NBA team actually impact an area financially? And the reality is, the Sonics would, if there was a team here, they would generate $188 million annually in revenue for the state of Washington through taxation and the sales tax and things like that. So I believe this is about economic stimulation. If you have a team, you have an extra $188 million annually for the state, in its revenue budget. So that would counter the argument if somebody said, well, it should be dedicated to go towards, education or whatever. The reality is that user fee from those opposing teams to come here to play would be dramatically lower than the actual revenue that's going to be raised for the team that's playing here.
Well,
from the team that's playing.
And I'd have to check the numbers and crunch the numbers, but my gut tells me there's no way an NBA team raises $188 million in taxes. And like I said, I'm just off the top of my head as you say that. That's hard for me to imagine.
I thought the same thing, but when and that's what struck that's why LeBron actually struck the conversation, not so much the departure. They should have been looking at those numbers at that time, but we weren't in the legislature. But we did look at those LeBron numbers, and the reality is that just in jersey sales alone, that brought in $60 million. So when you're looking at having a player like that can come to an organization, that drives those numbers. And it was $3.5 million. And it's interesting, New York, Miami, Chicago, the state of New Jersey, Los Angeles, all those teams that were trying to woo LeBron did those economic analyses, and they actually showed those. And, you can get great information on some of those.
Okay, I'll check that out. All right, so last question. I only have a few seconds here. If it's such a great deal, why doesn't the private sector do it? And if it makes financial sense, why doesn't government just get out of the way and let some private investors come and reap the benefits of it?
Well, that's a good question. I'll tell you this, that we do have, and that's another model we'll be looking at, is the private model. And we do have a lot of, I won't say their names on the air, but at this point in the stage of the game, but I've been contacted, our office has been, by several big-time CEOs in the Puget Sound area that are very interested in helping us out in this endeavor.
Okay, and it's my guess that's the only thing ultimately that'll fly if it's a private model, and you guys could provide some infrastructure and some support of that. But I just think politically, there just doesn't seem to be any ground. And I'm a huge, like you heard me when I was introducing you, I'm a huge Sonics fan. I just don't sense that there's widespread public interest in that unless it was almost purely a private model. But we'll see.
Yeah, well, that is kind of frustrating too, because when if these studies are correct and you're watching what the city of New York and Cleveland and all those other cities have done, and you're looking at the economic benefit to a region because of that, I think it's pretty sad, because the reality is that's an economic investment that we can use. And I've heard the same argument when the second line left Boeing, where people said, well, we shouldn't have given those, and we shouldn't give them tax incentives and things like that in order for them to keep those jobs here. And you know what? I believe you should, compete with places like South Carolina to keep those jobs here.
I get that. All right. Hey, Representative, I enjoyed talking with you about this. Thanks for coming on with me today.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, you bet. State Rep Mike Hope is teaming. He's a Republican. He's teaming with the Democrat. They're looking at ways to get basketball back here. I think it's going to have to be private. I do not think a public model is going to work. All right, up next.